Today, I am joined with Karyn Seitz, creator of the Happy Wife channel right here on YouTube. Now, both of our channels, we share the same goal of trying to teach women how to create their own happiness and trying to help men understand and navigate around our craziness. And I know that we also share quite a few of the same audience members. So this should actually be double the fun for you guys as we both kind of jam on why don't women want to take responsibility? What's going on with today's marriages? And also, we're each going to give you just a quick tip that at the end might help you get to the point to where you have a better marriage tomorrow than you did today. So Karyn, thank you so much. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica. It's really nice to be here. And like you said in your introduction, it's good to speak to another woman who's looking at the issues of responsibility and our stubbornness as women to not want to take accountability and responsibility. So thanks for having me.
As you know, it is extremely rare for women to get to the point where they do take that personal responsibility, often blaming their husband as the source of the problem. So how did you get to this point personally? Like, what was your realization where you're like, hey, I might be the problem here?
Good question. So for me, my path of learning to take accountability as a woman and helping other women in that same path really began a little over 10 years ago. I had been on very much a spiritual seeking path. I often joke I live here in Denver, and I spent a lot of time in Boulder, which is like the woo-woo capital of the States. And I was very much trying to find myself, figure myself out. I spent years in therapy from like 25 to 30. And not only was I trying to find the modalities to figure myself out, I was training and getting certified in these modalities along the way. So I was a yoga teacher. I taught meditation. I had a healing practice. All the while my intentions were to help and do good in the world, I was very lost in myself and very unhappy in myself. And of course, those issues were showing up in my relationship with my husband. And one day I got a call and got invited to a free workshop where I met my mentor, David. And he was the first person out of all the years of therapy, the spiritual seeking, everything that I did. He was the first person to very bluntly and directly tell me that I was the problem in my life. And so having that truth just directly presented to me was very much for me what I would call a red pill moment of here's a choice. I can continue to live in being a victim, or I can take this truth that is deeply resonating in me and see where this path leads me. And about a year into walking that path of really looking at myself and taking responsibility for how I was the problem in my life, my mentor brought up, so we need to talk about your marriage. And I probably went ghost white and was like, it's fine. We don't need to go there. What do you mean we need to talk about my marriage? But the truth is that I was emasculating my husband and creating a lot of unhappiness and how I was showing up in the marriage and really breaking him down, all with a facade of being like a sweet wife and a good wife. And everyone would have thought that. But behind the scenes, I had no respect for my husband, and I blamed him and was very certain that he was the problem in our issues in our marriage until I was able to see a different perspective and see myself through a different lens, see my husband, my marriage through a different lens. And then it became very clear that I was the problem. And it didn't mean my husband didn't have issues or challenges, but that he's a good man, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in a moment, because that's an important part of my message. But that I needed to change and look at myself. And as I started to do that, things began to rapidly change in my marriage.
You wouldn't think that it's just your own spiritual walk that is going to lead you to radically transform your marriage. And what I love about that part of your story is that it didn't require anything from your husband, that really you had the power to change through how you showed up I always say 1+1 is 2. So if you change the input, then the output is going to naturally have to change. We don't operate in a vacuum. Did you tell him, I'm going to try to work on our marriage, I'm going to try to show up and be a better wife, or is this something that you did on your own?
He and I owned a healing practice together. He was into the woo-woo too at that point in our lives. Now he's a plumber, so you can see how drastically our lives have changed. But he was introduced to these concepts at the same time. So we went through a rough patch because he was, at the same time, I was being red pilled for my what I call my woman ways, the truth of the manipulation, the emasculation, gaslighting that we have on a spectrum as women. As I was being red pilled to see the truth of my ways, and that he was also seeing the truth of what was happening, and he was learning that he wasn't the problem, in the sense that if I was happy in myself and showing up as my best in the marriage, we would be able to have a healthy, happy marriage. And so he was seeing a lot of this at the same time that I was. And like I said, we went through a bit of a rough patch where he wasn't very happy with me, but I had to stay committed to myself and see it through to see where it could go. And over time, and not very long, I'd say maybe 6 months to a year, my husband, being a good man, meaning steady, predictable, hardworking, wants me to be happy, wants the marriage to work. And good men also have short memories, that as I truly began to change and show up differently, he began to appreciate and experience that side of me. And he began to forget the ways that I was showing up before and how I made him feel wrong and bad in himself, and put that burden and responsibility of my happiness on him. And we began to have what I often talk about in my message, the dance. Me being myself as a woman, but taking responsibility for my happiness, allowing my husband to wear the pants and be the good man that he is. And now we work together in our differences, and also our how we come together in the marriage and really bring out the best in each other, and can have that dance now. But it was something I had to really commit to for myself, and know that I was doing it for me because of who I want to be and how I want to know myself, so that those changes in my marriage were clean. So it's changes that a woman has to want to make for herself to be the best she can be, and allow her husband to experience the benefit of that, but not doing it for a desired outcome, because then just there's strings attached.
There's not a whole lot of information for women, or at least there wasn't when I was looking. And this is one of the reasons why I started the channel once I was able to have this transformation, because I saw that there was this vacuum of information that needed to happen to be out there for actual strategies to make this happen, especially in today's marriage system where rules are no longer really a thing. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. But for you, it's one thing to transform your own marriage.
Yeah.
Why did you feel compelled to start a channel?
I tie my channel and my path to my calling from God. He has a bigger purpose in that for our society and our world. And for me, it's a path that has pushed me outside my comfort zone and go beyond what I ever would have let myself do or share, to really realize and recognize my potential and who God has made me to be. And YouTube was the first thing that really clicked and got the message out on a much bigger scale than anything I had been doing before.
And I want to congratulate you, because you're
Thanks, Monica.
you're rounding up to almost 200,000 subscribers right now.
I am.
And this tells me that what you are saying is really needed. Now, when I first started the channel, my goal was like yours, to help women, but it quickly flipped because my audience became 95% men. Are you in the same scenario? Is the majority
Very
of your...
similar. It's about 90% men, about 10% women on my channel. But what I really found in my experience, Monica, is that it became irrelevant even with my audience on YouTube being predominantly male, is that my courses at this point are really 50-50. I've been really, really pleasantly surprised how many women are open to the message and committed to changing and learning and growing in the ways that I have to teach. So that's been a really welcoming unfolding since I've been on this path.
If you think about your sheer volume of subscribers, and even though the percentage is small,
Yeah.
if that's 10%, that's still 20,000 women. That's a stadium. That's
That's right.
not insignificant. Profoundly changing even a handful of those
Yeah.
marriages are going to impact generations. And
Wow.
so
Thank you.
I think we need to keep this perspective.
I hadn't thought of it in that way. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you shedding light on that. That's really cool.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the current situation with marriages. 1950s, we seem to kind of glamorize. I think that everyone believes that in the 50s everyone was happy. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but we do know that things today aren't working well. We have a 50% divorce rate. How are you viewing this? Is this a perception problem, or did we have it right back then?
I don't think marriages were happier back then. I think more so that divorce was very taboo and there was much more societal structure and framework to kind of keep face and keep status to not get divorced. We have had these issues and challenges as women for thousands and thousands of years. And what has shown me that and opened up that lens to me are things like Solomon saying, I would rather sleep on the pitch of a roof than in the same room as a quarreling wife. And I can be a nerd and read things like ancient history and ancient philosophy and things like that from time to time. And from all over the world and all different cultures, I have seen quotes and writings about women and how we show up in marriage or relationships with men from ancient time. So to me, that sheds a light on no, these issues and challenges have always been there. They might show up in a different way, in a different context in our modern world, but that we haven't learned really how to have that dance between women and men and our differences and really come together in a marriage. So for me, I've understood a different purpose of marriage, which I label as God's plan for marriage, which is for us as women and good men to come together and to dance within those differences and to face our weaknesses and limitations, because we have different weaknesses and limitations as men and women, as a way to really grow and develop into the best version of ourselves. And in that personal growth and in that the challenges of being confronted with those weaknesses and limitations within ourselves, a love and care naturally grows within the relationship, but without a dependency on each other. And that is really the path to a happy, healthy marriage. And we haven't had that in the history of humankind.
One of the things that I love most about marriage, and I don't think that most people take this angle, but I am super into self-improvement. There is no better self-improvement tool out there. I have somebody who's going to be invested in me enough to where he's going to be able to see my blind spots, love me enough to say, hey, Monica, you need to knock this off. Or are you aware that you're doing these things? Because we can't see it. So how can we grow as a human if you don't have somebody who is invested in you enough to even make that effort? Back in the 50s, we had defined roles. The man goes to work, the woman stays home, what's expected of each other. You do have expectations, and if they're not conveyed and addressed, then you're going to have disappointment, and that's going to lead to a lot of problems. I think marriage really nowadays requires a ton of intentionality, and that is not something that a lot of people are willing to do. What are your thoughts about that?
We don't have our clear roles as women and men. And the problem in that for us as women is that we buck against having any kind of structure or roles. In my marriage and what I've learned in my roles, it doesn't need to be necessarily defined maybe how it was in the 50s of a woman staying home and a man going to work, but really understanding the strengths of a good man, understanding the strengths we have, that we have a natural softness, a natural nurturing nature, an ability to let our husbands lead in the dance. I know even in watching movies or shows that either depict earlier times or that came out in those times, you can still see the woman ways at play, even if she was in a defined role of staying home or being in that role, that there's still a bitterness, there's still a resentment, there's still an unhappiness. And really, it's something I'm thinking of now, Monica, as I talk about that. If we were happy then in those defined roles, especially in our more Western world, then there wouldn't have been the continued fight and path of feminism. That there, we were still looking to say what's making us unhappy. It's that we have to stay home. We can't have, I think one of the laws was we couldn't have credit cards. And so we were still looking for things outside of us to point the finger at that we blamed, and still looking for what could it be and trying to change things outside of us. And I think some things did need to change. However, if we were truly happy back then, it's interesting to think about, we wouldn't be fighting for those changes because we would be happy and content in the roles that we had defined and set out for us. So I think that those roles are more inherent and natural, that come out when we're willing to drop those walls that we have as women and allow those qualities to come out. And then that allows a good man to be in his natural role as a leader, being hardworking, the logical side. I talk about good men are problem solvers. So it's helpful for us as women to allow them to be in what they do best in that.
I always say I'm a very masculine woman. And when you're talking about a woman's natural softness, okay, I have a lot of qualities. That's not one of them. So if you are one of those women who struggle with that, just know that, you might be like me. And I still have to work on to this day, because Karyn, are you finding that this is a marathon that you think every time I think I have it figured out, everything I'm like, I got this marriage thing down, then I mess up again. Are you still struggling? Because I feel like I struggle all the time.
Whenever I start to have that,
Arrogance?
I wouldn't say the word, an arrogance of I'm there, I've got this. That's actually a huge red flag that I'm getting off track, because it is an ongoing journey. When I look at marriage as a way for me to really self-actualize and be the best in who I am as a woman, and my marriage being my greatest teacher in that, that's a lifelong journey and commitment. And there is no there, because marriage constantly brings us challenges to learn and grow from, adversities to grow and learn from. I never know what's around the corner that's going to shake up a limitation in myself as a woman that I thought I had worked on and maybe outgrown or overcome. And then it's like, oh gosh, there that is again. I want to come back a little bit to what you were talking about in our softness, and offer a perspective of it's who we are. It's our nature. And I have found something very, very different, that it's really our protection that we've built around us because of how much we have lived in a victim mentality, blaming others. As we begin to work through that and work through the struggles, and continue to grow in that, we have an inherent softness as women. And it doesn't have to look like what we might think of as softness, like talking, really like gently. And my mentor, David, his partner, Peggy, who has also been a mentor to me on this path and journey, she defines soft as strength without fear. So there's a strength we have to find, and I'll speak for myself. There's a strength I have to find in my marriage. I'll use a common behavior we have is how defensive we are as women. If our husband brings up any type of criticism on our behavior, or brings up anything of, hey, could you work on this? This is really tough, or this is a big challenge. Our claws come out and we go into defense mode and we tear them down and make them wrong. Being confronted with those behaviors or things we might need to change, or constructive criticism, is really a fear of looking at ourselves and being exposed. When we can have that strength in the face of that and not let our fear overtake us, that's really a true softness, and it's an inherent strength we have as women.
the strategy that I use to try to overcome this natural defensiveness that we all have is I went for a period of time. I don't know if it was 1 week or two, where I said, you know what, no matter what he tells me, I'm going to assume it's true. And I've found most of the time, you know what, he's right. I no longer have to agree with these things that he's telling me. If he sees it as a problem within our marriage and I have the capacity to change that, I do. Did you have a specific strategy that you use to overcome that defensiveness?
So the framework that I most work with is, as a woman married to a good man, I am the problem 100% of the time. Doesn't mean he doesn't have issues or problems, but I'm the problem in the marriage because of my rigidity, because of my walls, because of my deep tendency to live in what I call camp victim, and putting the blame outside of me, and the effect that that has on a good man. That when I use the framework of I am the problem, period, no wiggle room, it backs me into a corner to look at myself so that I can overcome that wiring in me to want to throw the blame back on him, make him the bad guy, when in reality, he's thoughtful, he's caring, he wants the best for me, he wants the best for himself, he wants me to be happy. It doesn't mean he can't ever be incorrect, but I will always learn something about myself if I know I am the problem and back myself into that corner.
It is a radical thing, but you know what? You've gotten radical results.
Yeah.
You want normal, keep doing normal. See, end up at the 50% divorce rate like everyone else. Let's segue into actually like marriage itself. Are men even smart to entertain this idea now?
Yeah, really good question. I am pro marriage. I'm an advocate for marriage. I think it is a crucial, critical part of our structure as a society and a culture, that without marriage and without the structure of marriage, that is very detrimental to our society and to humankind. I would not have been able to fully know and experience myself and the goodness and strengths I have as a woman without my marriage and my husband as a mirror to bring those parts of me out, and for me to work on those limitations. That marriage was a necessary avenue and path for me to bring out the best of me as a woman. If marriage is important to you, whether it's your religious values and getting married as part of that structure in your faith, having kids and knowing that being married and having that commitment to raise kids is an important part of your path, then you do not want to be a victim and opt out of marriage and run from marriage or run from women, because we do have a particular set of challenges, which is why I teach to good men, your wife is your greatest teacher. That she's going to show you the weaknesses in yourself. A challenge good men have is that they believe that their wife knows what a healthy marriage is supposed to look like, so they default to her. And in that, give the power away and then begin to be brainwashed and gaslit that they are the problem. To me, marriage is essential for a man to truly know who he is as a man and be able to bring those strengths and qualities out in him, and for a woman to know that the strengths and qualities in her as a woman and to bring them out. That being said, is marriage for everyone? No. Is there, just like going to college isn't for everyone, or owning a business isn't for everyone, having kids isn't for everyone, marriage isn't for everyone. So it's something that a man has to slow down and reflect on. Is this an important aspect of my life that I want to experience? And then, just like with anything else, I'll use the business example, there's inherent risk in that choice. Yes, you are taking a risk, but you are the one wanting to take the risk, and you go in and you do the best you can, and you go in with a plan and a roadmap to really grow in yourself. A lot of content out there, especially in more the red pill space, that shows, data. Men are walking away, men are going their own way. But when you get off the computer and you get off social media and you go out into life, you're going to see a much different picture. So yes, is there a subculture of men maybe going their own way, not getting married, not wanting to be in relationships with women? Of course. but I don't think it's mainstream culture.
I've also experienced that what is reflected online doesn't seem to be congruent with when I ask this younger generation. I have two older sons, 22 and 20, and one's engaged, one has a girlfriend. My last lady, young gal, same age range, she's dating. I specifically asked her this last appointment. I'm like, what are your friends thinking about marriage? And she's like, oh yeah, no, we're all,
Yeah.
that's our goal. So I'm not seeing in real life this hatred and this opting out and this women aren't worth it. This is the path that most people want to take. And if this is the path that most people want to take, which I would say is true, why not give them the effective strategies and tools that's going to help them make the most successful? Because I'm with you. I'm very pro-marriage, exactly for the reasons that you said. On top of the children and things of this nature, your ability to level up as a sheer human being, you can't get it any other way. I don't see how, just raising children with baby mamas, how that works for society. If you want the easy, peaceful path, don't get married, because women, as you say, they are on a spectrum, problematic. It's going to be some level of difficulty, and that's not a bad thing. I'm with you. I think the institution of marriage itself is where it's at. We do need, however, more effective strategies and better intentionalities. I love that we both understand women ways and have come to the same conclusion that it's still worth it, guys. Yeah. It's still worth it. One of the things that I see a lot in my comment section, and yours as well, many other people within the space, is that all women are just gold diggers. And it's one of the biggest frustrations that I have when I read this, because I don't know one person, one woman in my personal space that has ever, on their wedding day, she's very excited to be married. This is not a bait and switch. She didn't say, I'm going to marry, this is my retirement plan. I'm going to marry this guy and then I'm going to divorce him. I'm going to get half of his money. I don't know anybody. What's your thoughts? Are all women gold diggers?
The truth is, and what I've seen is, women are much more one of two ways. But if you go to the grocery store and you look around, or you go to a baseball game or a sporting event, and you're out and about amongst other families and people, you're going to see people pretty evenly matched. Is my experience, and so we're either going to pick someone that's pretty similar social status to us, or similar in look, similar in just lifestyle. And on the other hand, as women, we also have a tendency to marry or choose a husband or a relationship with someone who's below us in some way, whether that they have some kind of struggle, whether it be that they like to drink, or they might have a troubled past or a really hard upbringing and family life, or challenges with work, because we're looking for something to blame when things don't work out, or looking for something to point the finger at. We don't have to look at our own struggles, and we can always put the focus on them. And that's much more a wired woman way in us than being a gold digger. Because if I'm marrying someone highly successful or in a different lifestyle or status than me, that's going to expose me in some way, or I might have to get out there and create a life. Whereas if I marry someone kind of similar or even below me, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way at all, but someone with some type of challenge, we can point the finger out and not have to take responsibility when things don't work out. That when we do that, then we can hide, and there's less accountability. And we often also get worried about being left. And so if someone is more successful and in that higher bracket, we're going to be really nervous about them leaving us and then being strong. They won't put up with our woman ways and problematic behavior, as you put. So we're threatened by that. And I find that to be much more common, and a gold digger being a very, very small percentage of women. And again, just a subculture.
When I hear a man saying that all women are gold diggers, my first response is, well, do you have gold to dig? Because when you look at the stats, the average household income, the average income for men, right, 50 to 60, 65,000 at their peak. And most of the time the woman they're marrying before he even gets to that peak. So he might start off, he might be making 30, 40,000 when they first get together. That's not a woman who's looking for a man with money. Like, if she is truly, if that's her intent, she's not going to be looking for 30 to 60 to 65,000. She's going to be looking for something much greater. So I think this is a way for men to really not look at themselves, my part in this whole situation.
So it's either, good men that can get sucked into that arena and lose sight of who they truly are and become jaded and stuck in camp victim, or they're not nice men who are in a derogatory view of women and just spewing hate. And to me, it's not reflective of our normal, everyday, get out in life society. It's all part of this subculture that we find on YouTube and social media.
It's very much a bias. Like you only see the negative news on the news, and that's why it's on the news, because it's negative. And another thing I think that's kind of misguided from men is I don't know if this is just because men look at far fewer qualities when assessing for a potential relationship or a potential wife, but what we look at for men when we're dating or looking for a husband involves hundreds of traits and characteristics that we're looking at to see if we want to spend our life with this person. But that, yes, money is a piece of the pie. It might be more significant to one woman than the other, but it's still just a piece of the pie. Each individual woman has their own little types of qualifications of things that she's looking for that are important to her. So I just think it's maybe this perception that men just don't understand just truly how many different things we're looking at when we're looking at trying to find a husband.
My experience was when I had quote unquote values of what was important to me and a man to be in a relationship with, those were the things I was actually missing within myself. And then the fascinating part, when we don't have those within ourselves, whether we're talking about, kindness or a good sense of humor or being easygoing and laid back, when we want that in another, it's lacking within ourselves. And then we might not even be able to see those qualities in another person because we don't know ourselves as that. When a woman is ready to get married, she's looking for a good man. She's looking for steady Eddie, somebody she can depend on, someone that's going to give her the fantasy of the life she thought was going to make her happy. And while we might have those characteristics we tell ourselves that we're looking for, we're really looking for someone that's going to fill that emptiness we feel within ourselves. And that's why oftentimes women get married, choose a good man, and then they're bored.
Boredom.
They're bored because they're bored with themselves, and because we don't have that engagement and sense of aliveness and purpose and meaning within ourselves. We've been looking for it outside of ourselves, and no one can give that to us. That we become bored thinking, oh, he doesn't give me those feelings anymore that I once have. We get stuck in our own entitlement to want to look for someone else or something else that's going to give us those feelings of love or a passion or desire that we thought we once had, when really it's a big void and emptiness within ourselves.
We do know that women are filing the majority of divorces, but the ultimate underlying reason really isn't known. But do you think this is why? It's just they get bored. I was happy for a bit, now I'm not anymore, and it's this cycle. Is that kind of your perspective?
Yeah, that we were never happy within ourselves because we weren't taught that. We maybe pretended or thought we were, but it's a fleeting feeling. How I define happiness, not an emotion, not a fleeting experience. It's much more tied and linked to purpose, meaning, and fulfillment within ourselves, a contentment, which we don't have as women. And the other part of us is that in one of our woman ways, being very selfish, being very entitled, that once we feel that our husbands are the ones making us unhappy, or they're not making us feel loved and cared for like they once did, and we create them to be the problem, that the underlying reason of why we leave a marriage and why more women initiate divorce is really born from our selfishness and entitlement to find what we think will make us happy. So it's an entitlement without consideration of our children, without consideration of our husbands, without consideration of our vows or the commitment we made, that we feel much more entitled to leave and find someone who's gonna give us those romantic feelings and feelings of love until they don't anymore. And then we'll find ourselves unhappy again. We leave our marriages very much from an emotional, irrational place that has no basis in reality. I saw a story this week. I was kind of not really blown away because these things don't shock me as much anymore. I'm like, oh, yep, there we go. There it is. This is universal. But I saw a story this week about a woman from Australia that wrote a book on like when your soulmate says no, and the whole basis of the book is that she was at a dinner party and was with her husband and met this man that she was sure he was her soulmate, never met him more than that night at dinner, divorced her husband to chase who she thought was her soulmate, and he didn't give her the time of day. So we leave for very irrational, emotional reasons that are, again, born from our sense of entitlement to find what we think is going to make us happy that never ever will, because what's missing is ourselves and our happiness within us. And no one and no man, no matter who he is ever going to be able to fill that.
Okay, so what I want to know then is, do you believe that women inherently do not have the ability to be loyal?
Mm-hmm. I think that as women in our woman ways and in that protection we live in camp victim. And in that we have no capacity to have integrity, character, loyalty, because we are in our extreme selfishness and self-centeredness and entitlement to go on the whim of our emotions or what we feel is missing without concern of another person. So it's not that we don't have the capacity to build that skill of loyalty or build that skill of integrity and character. It's what I've had to do. No, we don't have the capacity to be loyal because we are always going to go on the whim of our emotions and what we feel entitled to without concern for another, without empathy or how that's going to impact them.
Well, that sounds like a pretty doom and gloom message to the guys out here from a pro-marriage woman. So how do you rectify, or
I can understand that or see that perspective. It's good men are loyal and committed, so they find a way to navigate, and that's what I teach good men. You need an education to be able to navigate these woman ways. It's not meant to be doom or gloom or make women bad or wrong. It's understanding we are different. We are very different as women and men, and what men want to look to, and even men who are married, you want to look to, if your wife is open to looking at herself in any way of what I teach in these woman ways, you've hit the jackpot. And yes, she's still going to have her own limitations and weaknesses, but if she's willing to work on herself and change, then that's what you focus on. And you focus on the progress she's making, not the limitations or the weaknesses. But even for men who are married to women who are resistant, not going to take accountability, going to live in camp victim, they still love their wives. And they are still committed and want to do what it takes to make it work on their end. And that's a path that I teach for good men, because good men are very loyal. They take their vows very seriously. Many good men have Christian values or other religious values and morals that guide them to stay in their marriage. So they need a path to be able to navigate and still be happy within themselves, still create a life for themselves in the face of a wife who isn't going to change. I see a lot of videos out there. I don't watch a lot of them, but I see the titles because they show up in my feed. But a lot like all married women cheat and all married women are looking to leave. I don't subscribe to that messaging. That yes, are there married women who cheat, and more than we probably ever would have imagined? Absolutely. But that is a common issue within marriage. And just because as women, we struggle with our loyalty and commitment and integrity and character doesn't mean that we can't overcome that within ourselves and build those skills. And it doesn't mean doom and gloom for a man who's married to a woman who's not going to change. It doesn't mean she's absolutely going to go out of the marriage, but that's a risk that we all take when we get married, whether we're a man or a woman.
I think women are loyal to their feelings.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
They're
yeah.
loyal to their feelings. Men need to realize we're emotional based creatures. We do not think like they do. We're not made like they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's realize that, and as you
Yeah.
say, give them the proper tools to navigate around it. But you can look at it either way. You can get very doom and gloom about it. What's the point? Walk around like Eeyore. I have to say, I do get frustrated. I get highly frustrated that men are so loyal sometimes, particularly when it comes to the dead bedroom situation, where a man marries a woman, he's a good man, he took his vows seriously, like you said, and then he feels he's been bait and switched because all of a sudden she turns the sex off. It's been years, decades, nothing. I think it's awful. I think it's cruel. But the first thing I do ask him is, why are you still there? And, they do cite that they are men of faith. They do take their vows very seriously, or they financially cannot afford to do so, or there's children in the home. With our nature, we have to have boundaries, and men have to place those and enforce those. And if you're not willing to put divorce on the table, that basically she can act in whatever manner she wants to act, you're taking away any leverage or any accountability. I get frustrated that men put up with women's nature a little bit too much. What's your thoughts about that?
I never tell a good man whether he should get divorced or not, because it is a values choice, and nobody can tell us our values and whether our values are right or wrong or what to do. A good man takes his vows seriously. He takes being a father seriously. He takes his faith and religion seriously. So divorce is not an option for many good men, not all good men. And if that is an option to them and they are with a woman who's not going to change and they see that as the best path forward, then I support a good man in that. Absolutely. I have found, and I've had many men that I've worked with share this with me, they're very frustrated with the message of just leave, because that's not an option to them. They're very frustrated with the message of set boundaries, stand up to her, lay the law of the land, because giving that advice to a man, a good man who's been emasculated, broken down, beaten down, that is terrifying to where they are in the stage of what they've experienced in their marriage, that they first must see the reality of what's happening, because they don't see it because they're not wired that way, which is why they become so blind to it. I had a man recently share with me, very successful man, lovely family, but a wife who wasn't changing it. His strategies of setting frame and trying to be that masculine, strong man. And it made things so much worse because he was beaten down and he was taking a knife to a gunfight. It's not a constructive path for a man to start with that. Can some good men do that? Absolutely. But the majority of good men can't, because of the state of emasculation that they are in, that they have to heal and overcome, and then begin to test the waters and see, okay, who am I married to? Is she going to be open to changing or not? And if she's not, then he has to make a decision based on his values. Am I going to stay or am I going to go? And no matter the choice he makes, he also has to take responsibility for that and the consequences that come with either decision or choice.
There is a interesting study having to do with rats. When they were forced to work without basically the choice, then their cortisol levels spiked. But when they were given, I don't know how you give a rat a choice, but they gave the rat the choice. And if they chose to go through that same exact stressful situation, their cortisol levels were much less. If you do choose to stay, knowing that you were the one that made the choice, as opposed to feeling like you're forced into this stressful situation. Choosing it is a less stressful means.
Taking responsibility for that choice is necessary for a good man to take his power back. Otherwise, he will be in camp victim. His wife will continue to beat him down, and then he's creating that experience for himself. And again, not condoning a wife's behaviors in that. It's just a reality. So how do I want to face and navigate this reality so that I am in control of myself, knowing that I can't control another person, and trying to get her to change and keep beating on that door when she's not going to is very destructive to both the marriage and to the man.
you have an ability to change the marriage itself by just how you are showing up, which is different than showing up differently to cause and expect the change on their part. So I think that's a little bit of a difference there. Why do you think it is that women do not want to sleep with their husbands?
Good question. This question I get a lot is that we've used sex as a tool to get the marriage. So once we get the marriage, then and we know we've secured the man and we've secured a good man who's going to be loyal and not leave. We didn't have sex from the beginning out of a genuine interest in sex for having the sake of having sex and what we call it making love. That wasn't the purpose. It was an agenda to get the marriage, to get the man. So once we have that, it was a means to an end, to believe it's a woman's hormones that change or something going on with her biologically. And while those things are true and that we go through biological changes and hormonal differences, it isn't due to those external factors. It's that we've never learned as women to truly enjoy sex for the experience of ourselves. We've had sex for the man. We've done what we thought we needed to do to impress a man or get the man, and we put on a show. And so we've never learned to slow down and have sex as an experience of ourselves that actually really allows us to get to know ourselves as women and that softness and feminine and nurturing side. And so it's been a tool. Again, kind of going way back to our beginning of our conversation, Monica, and that radical responsibility. I have to see as women, one, my desire and interest in sex is not as high as a man's, that's a biological difference in us and a matter of what's most important to us in a relationship. I often say it's going to be 1, 2, or 3 for a man in a marriage. It might not even be on the top list of 10 of what's important to us in a marriage as women. So we have to meet each other and find that dance and those differences. And what I teach women of all age ranges, whether they're going through menopause or hormonal changes or have children or anything that we can create a story around, is no, you have to look at yourself, that learning to enjoy sex and engage in sex in your marriage is just a choice. So we can take the complications out of it and we can come back to know this is part of a healthy marriage and it's a gift I give myself that my husband gets to benefit from, that is very important to him, and learn to enjoy it for ourselves. And then it just becomes a choice. And even if I'm not feeling in the mood, or even if something hormonal is going on, I can slow down internally and be in control of that in myself and know this is a healthy aspect of me as a woman and something that is absolutely a healthy part of a marriage, that without it, it can't be healthy. And I blew up my channel when I said once a week is a healthy commitment to come together in those differences as a good man and a woman, and a good man being very reasonable, very open to compromise. It's like, that would be wonderful. Right. Like, that would be really great. And then I learned there's a camp of men out there that think, no, sex should be on demand in a marriage and it should happen every day. And I don't see that as being realistic. Because of our differences in us as women and men, that it's hard for a man to understand sex isn't as important to a woman, or she doesn't desire it at that frequency. But a good man might not totally understand the difference, but comes to accept that difference and wants to be in that dance. And if his wife is engaged and learning to enjoy it for herself and genuinely coming to the table to make that important aspect of a marriage, he's going to be fulfilled and satisfied within that. Then it becomes a simple choice and understanding we're made with all the right parts to enjoy it. And as things change, you might need some things to help and aid you in it being comfortable. And you commit to that and finding that so that you keep that healthy in yourself and healthy in your marriage, knowing that it's really important.
I'm going to push back a little bit on this because as far as I know, you've not gone through the menopause experience yet, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this was actually, my whole biology was the whole reason I became self-aware as a wife, because at 45, I went through early menopause and I went on bioidentical hormones, the estrogen and then the testosterone as well. And we were fine. Like you said, once a week, normal average couple before then. And that once I did that, it bumped us up to 3 to 5 times a week. And because I was giving him sex more frequently, he became super happy. And then I was like, oh, well, what else can I do to make him happy? And then it started this path to where we were now. And so I was like, and I kept on trying to outwife myself. So for me, the basis of the biological hormones is what started my self-awareness, ironically. And I can even tell because I'm on pellets. I'll be like, I'm not as interested. It must be getting close my pellets must be needing to be redone. So to say that it's 100% a choice without hormones playing into a role as much as they do, I don't think that's true. At least it hasn't been my experience. Having walked in men's shoes and understanding the innate drive that men have because of the level of testosterone that they have, if I were to ever go off of it, I would make that choice to always make it more of a priority. It's the effort, like you said, level 10. I don't even think it's number 10. I think it might be number 514 on a woman's priority list. Sometimes, especially with everything going on with life and kids and school and sports and craziness. When you're entering into a marriage, he does have that biological drive. He wants to connect to you emotionally that way, and it's a different way than we connect, but it should be important for you enough, your marriage and your husband, to want to meet him where you can meet him. You can't just say, well, it's how I am. Like,
use that as an
you have to
excuse.
show up. You have to make the effort to get whatever corrected needs to be corrected. And that's where I get most frustrated is that women just are like, well, it is what it is. No, it's not what it is. I think when you take biology out of the equation with menopause is essentially what that does, is it takes away I call the hormones the helper. You have a helper saying, hey, once a month with ovulation, we need to get our sexy time in. Now things are even going to get worse. Women need to choose priorities. Your husband, if he's not the priority, I don't know what else you're doing with your life. Like, what's the point of being married if you're not putting your husband as the priority? It doesn't make sense to me.
You recognized an issue and went out and got the support you needed and not using that as an excuse. And that's living and can't take responsibility. The problem is women use hormones and menopause and issues around that as the golden ticket that they've been waiting for to disengage from sex because we weren't interested in it from that get-go. This is the perfect excuse that he can't question.
Right.
And society won't question. And so that's where we have to look at it. Well, if that is an issue, what do you need to do to support yourself? And how do you get to the place to make this a priority for yourself and your marriage?
I like that perspective as well, Karyn. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up. I promise that we're going to give the guys and the handful of women who are watching one tip that can help them have a better marriage tomorrow than they had today. What do you got?
I will speak to the men first. And again, and speaking to good men, there's nothing that you can do that will ever make your wife happy, because happiness is something that we have to cultivate within ourselves, and that a good man is not the source of his wife's unhappiness. So good men have to retire from trying to do the things to make their wife happy. And the truth is that the more a man tries to make his wife happy and she's unhappy in herself, the angrier and more resentful she becomes, because somewhere in her, she's recognizing that nothing is working to make her happy, and it confronts her with her own unhappiness and herself. So she lashes out more. So I tell men, you need to take the energy that you're putting into bending at your wife's whim to try to make her happy. You need to take that energy and put it into yourself to rebuild yourself and your strength and confidence to do the things that you enjoy, so that you are full and that you are giving back to yourself what your wife is trying to suck out of you in our woman ways. And then to the women in relationship to that, is that your happiness is your responsibility, that it's an internal experience of feeling good about who you are. It's creating value in yourself and showing yourself that you're important and that you matter. And when you learn to do that for you and you're married to a good man, he's going to be right there waiting for you, and he's going to be the caring, loving, thoughtful, generous, loving man that he already is, and you get the benefit of that. The reason you're not experiencing that is your unhappiness in yourself, and that is your job to fix and resolve, and there's nothing your husband can do to fix or resolve that within you. Monica.
Those are fantastic. I love them. First one for the men is that you need to tell your wife no more often. And it really comes about to what you were just saying, more so just from a slightly different angle. I don't think men have enough boundaries. And what they do is they become fearful with their wives. And so they're afraid to tell her no. Women like to say, this is going to make me happy. The big expensive house that I can't afford, that extra baby that she wants, the moving to a different city. Men have to just start saying no, because as the leader in the household, he kind of has that logical, rational side. And women respect men who are framed. I know you don't like this frame talk, but are framed and have enough self-respect and know his role and know what he's good at to make those calls. A good man's going to naturally listen and collect all the data and all the input and make those tough decisions that us in our emotional state and our emotional feeling-based operating system, we don't do well. Too many men will not tell their wives no because he just doesn't want to deal with the battle in the moment, because she's not going to be happy that she's not getting what she wants. So I really would encourage men to really focus more on telling his wife no, because it will create a level of respect within her and make her feel more safe. For the women, I always go to the default of what's your man's highest priority? It's sex. Like it or not like it, it is what it is. Give your husband all kinds of sex. It's going to radically transform your marriage. He's going to be so happy. You're going to be happy. For me, I know that the more often that I do so, the more I want it. It's like this positive biofeedback. It keeps it to the top of the top of the tabs, as I always say. So always maintain a high level of sex because it's so important to your husband. So Karyn, where can the audience, how are the viewers here, where can they find you? What's the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Happy Wife School channel on YouTube, and then you can also find me on Spotify and Apple, and thehappywifeschool.com, where you can learn more about my courses. I have 2 courses for women. One is the happiness program that teaches us to live in camp, take responsibility, and learn to cultivate a healthy relationship with ourselves so that we are happy within and don't put that burden on our husbands. And then after that, I have the Happy Wife program that really zeroes in on our emotional challenges as women in a marriage with a good man, learning to live in that framework of I am the problem so that we can be the solution, and developing high emotional intelligence in our marriage. And then for men, I teach you to heal from the emasculation so that you can have a constructive way to navigate your marriage and rebuild your strength and confidence to be able to set constructive boundaries. And Monica, thank you so much for having me on today and asking such thoughtful questions, the great back and forth in our similarities and differences in what we teach.
It's been awesome. Once again, congratulations on such a wonderful, successful channel. I think that the work you are doing is God's work, and I just want to encourage you to keep at it, and hopefully between you and I, these guys will just continue to we'll start to have an amazing marriage. Yeah. So until then, Karyn, we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.